Jack had never imagined that one day he would be stuck on a strange alien world. His spaceship had malfunctioned, and he crash-landed on a remote planet far from Earth. The ship's controls were damaged beyond repair, and the communication system was completely down. Jack was stranded alone, no way of contacting anyone. The planet's atmosphere was thick with mist, and the air felt heavy. The strange landscape around him was full of jagged rocks and thick, tall plants he had never seen before. The planet was eerily quiet, the only sounds coming from the rustling of the plant life in the wind. Jack knew that if he didn't figure out a way to survive, he would likely die here. But there was no time to panic. He had to focus, had to make sure he stayed alive for the next few days. Jack explored the surrounding area, looking for supplies. He managed to find some water from a small stream, and he built a shelter from the materials around him. It wasn't much, but it was enough to keep him safe for now. Yet the loneliness was overwhelming. Every night, as he sat alone by the fire he built, Jack couldn't help but feel the weight of isolation. One afternoon, while Jack was walking near the edge of a rocky hill, he spotted something in the distance. At first he thought it was just a shadow, but as he got closer, he realized it was a figure an alien woman lying unconscious on the ground. Jack froze for a moment, unsure of what to do. He had never seen anything like her before. Unlike any creature he had ever read about or imagined, her skin shimmered with a strange soft glow, unlike anything Jack had ever seen. She had sharp but beautiful features, with eyes that seemed to shimmer with the colors of the stars. Her long hair flowed like liquid silver, and her body was covered in strange, delicate armor that didn't look like anything Jack could identify. She appeared to be hurt. Her breathing was shallow, and there were small cuts on her arms and legs. Jack approached her cautiously, not wanting to startle her. He checked for any signs of life. Her pulse was weak, but it was there. She was alive, but she needed help. He quickly searched his surroundings, finding some cloth and materials. In his bag, Jack wasn't sure if they would be useful, but he could at least try to help. Use the cloth to wrap her wounds as best as he could. Her skin was so smooth, and Jack felt an overwhelming sense of responsibility for her. Even though he didn't know who she was or where she came from. After securing the bandages, Jack sat down beside her, watching over her. The day turned into night, and the temperature began to drop. Jack realized that she would need warmth to survive. He had a blanket from his ship, a small but warm one, and he decided to use it for her. He gently draped the blanket over her body, tucking it around her to keep her warm. The alien woman stirred slightly, her eyes fluttering open. Her eyes were unlike anything he had ever seen. They were deep and filled with a quiet wisdom, but they also held a hint of fear, as if she was unsure of her surroundings and of him. "I'm here to help," Jack said softly, his voice filled with uncertainty. He didn't know if she could understand him. The language barrier was a challenge, but Jack figured that she could at least sense his kindness. The alien woman didn't speak. Instead, she gave him a small nod, as if acknowledging his presence. She didn't seem afraid, just cautious. Jack smiled, feeling a small sense of relief. Maybe this would be the beginning of some kind of understanding. For the next few hours, Jack kept watch over her, hoping that she would recover. As he sat there, he couldn't help but feel a strange connection to this alien woman. She was from another world, yet in that moment she felt like someone he needed to protect. He didn't know why he felt this way. He had never met an alien before, let alone one in need of his help. By the time the first light of dawn broke over the horizon, the alien woman's breathing had steadied. She was still weak, but her wounds appeared to be healing thanks to the care Jack had provided. He let out a quiet sigh of relief as she slowly sat up. She glanced at the blanket around her, then back at Jack. Her eyes were filled with something. Jack couldn't quite place something between curiosity and gratitude. She reached out to touch the blanket, her fingers grazing over the fabric gently, almost as if she was trying to understand its significance. Jack didn't speak at first. He just watched her, unsure of what to say or how to communicate with her. But in that moment, it didn't matter. He had given her the warmth she needed, and that was enough. The alien woman finally spoke, her voice soft and melodic. It wasn't a language Jack understood, but he could feel the emotion behind her words. Her eyes never left his, and in that quiet moment Jack realized something. This encounter, this strange meeting, was just the beginning of something bigger than either of them could have imagined. And as she gave him a small, quiet nod of gratitude, Jack couldn't help but wonder what the future would hold for them both. Jack woke up to the sound of soft rustling. The alien woman, whom he had helped the night before, was slowly standing up. Her movements were graceful, despite her apparent weakness. She was still wrapped in the blanket Jack had given her, but she looked different. Newcomer, more at ease. The sunlight had begun to peek through the trees, casting a warm glow across the forest floor. He stretched and stood up, ready to check on her. She glanced at him, her eyes still glowing faintly. Jack smiled at her, but the language barrier between them still stood. He didn't know how to communicate, but he wanted to make sure she was okay. "Are you feeling better?" he asked gently. Though he wasn't sure if she understood him, the alien woman nodded slightly, her eyes softening as she met his gaze. Jack felt a sense of relief. She seemed to be recovering, and that was all that mattered. She didn't speak, but her eyes told him everything. There was a kind of quiet understanding between them, as if they didn't need words to share their feelings. Jack could sense her gratitude, and it made him feel as though he had done something meaningful. Even if he hadn't known exactly what she needed. For a while, they simply stood there, exchanging glances. Why Jack wanted to help, but he wasn't sure what to do next. He glanced around, searching for something he could offer. He picked up a few rocks, trying to gather supplies to make her feel more comfortable. But he didn't know much about her species. He wondered if she had any specific needs he couldn't understand. To his surprise, the alien woman suddenly moved toward him, gesturing for him to follow. She walked ahead, her pace slow but steady. Jack hesitated for a moment, unsure of whether he should follow. But something about the way she moved made him feel like he was meant to be with her. He followed her through the dense forest, his eyes constantly scanning their surroundings. The alien woman led him to a small, hidden clearing. There a strange structure stood, something that didn't belong to the planet. It was unlike any building Jack had ever seen. The surface was smooth, and it shimmered in the sunlight, almost like metal, but with an otherworldly glow. Jack couldn't help but be amazed. The structure was clearly part of her ship, maybe the remains of it. He felt a rush of curiosity and excitement. "Is this yours?" he asked, his voice full of wonder. The alien woman nodded again, her eyes darkening for a moment. Jack could tell that the memories tied to this place were painful. She had likely lost everything here: her home, her people, and her life. Jack felt a pang of sympathy for her. "I'm sorry," he said softly, unsure if she could understand his words. I wish I could help more." She didn't speak, but she didn't need to. She walked toward the structure, touching it gently. With her fingertips, it hummed softly, and Jack saw a faint flicker of light inside. The alien woman seemed to be activating something, though Jack didn't know what it was. He stepped closer, watching her in awe. The connection between them was still new, but Jack felt something deep and unspoken growing. It was beginning to care about her. Even though he had only known her for a short time, for a moment the air between them felt heavy, filled with an unspoken bond. Jack didn't know if it was because they were both alone in this strange place, or if there was something more to it. All he knew was that he wanted to protect her, to make sure she was safe. The alien woman glanced at him and then turned her attention back to the structure. She appeared deep in thought. Jack, however, didn't press her. Instead, he sat down nearby, watching her work. After a few minutes, she turned toward him again, her expression softening. She seemed to be studying him, as if she were trying to understand him better. Then, to Jack's surprise, she walked toward him and sat down beside him. She didn't say anything, but she rested her hand on the blanket he had given her, fingers gently stroking the fabric. Jack wasn't sure what to make of it. Was this a sign of trust? Or was she simply grateful for his help? Whatever it was, Jack felt honored. He had never expected to find such a connection with an alien. Slowly, Jack reached out and touched her arm gently. He didn't know if it was the right thing to do, but he felt an instinctive need to show her that he cared. She didn't pull away, and her eyes softened even more. There was a quiet, unspoken understanding between them, something that needed no words. They sat together for a long time, the silence comforting rather than awkward. Jack had never felt such a deep connection with another being before. Even though they were from different worlds, they shared something, now a bond forged through survival, kindness, and trust. When the sun began to set, the alien woman stood up again, motioning for Jack to follow her. He stood, eager to see where she would lead him next. She guided him deeper into the forest, her steps steady and confident. Jack followed without hesitation, feeling a strange sense of peace. He didn't know where this journey would take them, but he felt like he was no longer alone. For the first time since the crash, Jack realized he wasn't just surviving, he was building something. A bond, a connection, as they continued through the dense forest. Jack couldn't shake the feeling that this alien woman, this mysterious stranger, was going to change his life in ways he could never have imagined. Jack had never thought that a simple gesture could lead to such a strong connection. Every day, he found himself growing more attached to the alien woman Zara. She wasn't just a stranger from another world anymore. She was someone he cared about, and the bond between them was growing stronger with each passing moment. For the past few days, they had been traveling together through the dense forest. Jack still didn't fully understand where they were going, but Zara led him with quiet confidence. She didn't speak much, but her actions told him everything. It was as though they communicated without words through gestures, looks, and the subtle way she interacted with him. Zara had been teaching him small things about her species. She showed him how to navigate the strange planet, how to find food and water, and how to use the alien technology in her wrecked ship. Jack was amazed at how much she knew, how easily she adapted to her environment. It was as though she had been prepared for this moment her entire life. But there was more to her than just survival skills. How Zara had a quiet strength about her, a wisdom that Jack couldn't help but admire. When he was struggling with something, she would be there, offering guidance without ever forcing her ideas on him. It felt like a silent understanding between them, something that didn't need to be said out loud. One evening, after a long day of traveling, they sat down by a small stream. Jack was tired, his body aching from the constant movement. He hadn't realized how much time had passed since the crash. Days, maybe weeks, had blended together in a haze of survival and uncertainty. Zara, however, seemed at peace. She was sitting on a rock near the water, her eyes closed as if she were listening to the rhythm of the planet itself. Jack watched her for a moment, wondering what was going on in her mind. He still didn't know much about her past, but he could tell that she had been through a lot. The way she carried herself, so calm, so collected, told Jack that she had learned to survive in the face of hardship. He decided to speak, though he wasn't sure if it would matter. "Zara," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I'm glad I found you. I don't know how, but I feel like I'm not alone anymore." Zara opened her eyes and looked at him. For a moment, her gaze softened, and Jack could feel the weight of her unspoken response. She reached out, touching his arm gently. It was a simple gesture, but it meant more than any words could say. She understood. And in that moment, Jack realized that Zara was more than just a survivor. She was someone who had learned to find strength in others. Just as he was learning to do, they sat in silence for a while, the only sound being the gentle flow of the stream. Jack felt a sense of peace that he hadn't experienced in days. He had been so focused on surviving, on getting by each day, that he had forgotten what it felt like to connect with someone. Zara had reminded him of that, and he couldn't help but feel grateful for her presence. Later that night, as they sat by the fire, Zara did something unexpected. She reached into her pack and pulled out a small, glowing object. It was unlike anything Jack had seen before. The object shimmered with an otherworldly light, casting strange shadows on the ground around them. Zara held it out to him, her eyes meeting his with a quiet intensity. Jack hesitated for a moment, unsure of what to do. But Zara's gaze never wavered. She was offering him something, and Jack knew that whatever it was important. Slowly, he reached out and took the object from her. It was smooth and cool to the touch, and it hummed faintly in his hand. Zara's eyes softened, and she spoke in her native language. Jack didn't understand the words, but the tone of her voice told him everything. She was giving him a piece of her culture, a gift from her world. Jack looked at the object, then back at her. He didn't know what it meant, but he could feel the weight of its significance. He held it up to the light, studying it closely. The object was small, about the size of a marble butt. It seemed to pulse with energy. It was a beautiful piece of alien craftsmanship, intricate and delicate. Jack could tell it was something valuable, something that Zara had chosen to give him. "Thank you," Jack said, his voice filled with sincerity. "I don't know what this is, but I'll keep. It's safe, I promise." Zara nodded, her eyes softening once again. She didn't expect anything in return, Jack realized. This wasn't about getting something back. It was about trust. Zara was showing him that she trusted him, and in that moment, Jack felt a deep sense of responsibility. He wanted to prove to her that he would be worthy of that trust. The night grew quiet again, the fire crackling softly as they both stared into the flames. Jack thought about everything that had happened since the crash. The confusion, the fear, the loneliness, and yet here he was, sitting next to an alien woman who had shown him more kindness than he had ever imagined possible. Jack didn't know what the future held, but he knew one thing for sure. Zara was no longer just an alien he had found stranded. On a strange world, she was his companion, his partner in survival, and maybe, just maybe, the beginning of something he never thought possible. The bond between them had formed in silence, but Jack knew it was stronger than any words could express. The days had turned into weeks, and Jack had grown accustomed to life on the alien planet. His routine had become simpler: finding food, building shelter, and keeping watch over Zara. But even with all the daily tasks, there was a constant undercurrent of uncertainty. They were both far from home, and Jack couldn't shake the feeling that something important was unfolding between them. Zara, though still quiet, had become an essential part of his life. They worked together, and though neither spoke much, Jack could sense that she had come to rely on him in ways that were beyond just survival. She trusted him, and he felt that trust every time she looked at him, every time she reached out to him in the quiet moments of their shared time. One evening, after they had finished their meal by the fire, Jack noticed something different in Zara's eyes. She was looking at him, but this time, there was a new depth to her gaze. It wasn't just gratitude or curiosity, it was something more. Zara stood up slowly, her movements graceful as always, and walked toward a small pile of rocks near the fire. Jack watched her, unsure of what she was doing. She picked up a smooth stone, then turned back to him. With a soft motion, she held it out to him, her fingers trembling slightly. Jack's heart skipped a beat. It was an offer. He knew that much. But he wasn't sure what it meant. The stone was beautiful, glowing faintly under the light of the fire, its surface smooth and warm. It seemed to pulse with a soft energy that made Jack feel something he couldn't quite explain. "Zara," Jack said, his voice almost a whisper. "What is this?" Zara didn't speak, but her eyes held a quiet intensity. She stepped closer to him, her gaze never leaving his. Jack hesitated for a moment before reaching out and taking the stone from her. As soon as his fingers brushed against hers, he felt a jolt of energia, connection that ran deeper than anything he had ever experienced. It wasn't just physical. It was as though something had passed between them, something unspoken but undeniable. She nodded at him, her eyes softening, and Jack could feel the meaning of her gesture sink in. This stone, this small, simple object, was a gift. But more than that, it was a symbol of trust and connection. It was her way of saying that she wasn't alone anymore, that they weren't alone anymore. "I'll keep it safe," Jack promised, quietly, his voice filled with sincerity. "I'll never forget this." Zira didn't need to hear the words. She could see it in his eyes, and that was enough. She stepped back, giving him space, her eyes still watching him. Jack didn't understand everything about her or her culture, but in that moment, he realized that her gesture had spoken louder than any words could have. She had shared a part of herself with him, and he knew that meant something important. As the night grew colder, they sat in silence by the fire, the crackling of the flames, the only sound between them. Jack held the stone carefully in his hand, feeling its warmth and the energy that seemed to flow through it. It was a strange sensation, one he couldn't fully explain. But it felt like a bond between him and Zara, something that went beyond the physical world and into something more mysterious, something unexplainable. For the first time, Jack felt truly connected to this alien world. The fear and uncertainty he had felt when he first crash-landed here had faded into the background. Now it was just him and Zara, two beings from different worlds, trying to survive together. Zara looked at him again, her eyes filled with something Jack couldn't quite name. There was no need for words. The silence between them was comfortable now, and Jack found himself wondering what future would hold for them. He couldn't stay on this planet forever, but for now, they had each other, and that was enough. As the fire burned down to embers, Zara stood up and motioned for Jack to follow her. Jack knew that she was taking him somewhere, leading him into the unknown once again, stood, holding the stone close to his chest, and followed her without hesitation. They walked through the forest, the soft glow of the stone lighting their path. Jack couldn't help but feel a sense of peace, even though he didn't know what was ahead. With Zara by his side, he felt like anything was possible. They had survived together so far, and that made him believe that maybe they could face whatever came next. The night air was cool and still. Jack felt a strange sense of calm. There was no longer any fear of being alone on this strange planet. Zara had become more than just a companion. She had become his partner, his equal in a way that felt natural, not forced. As they walked, Jack glanced at her, his heart full of gratitude. He didn't know what the future held, but in that moment, he knew one thing for sure. They were no longer strangers. They had crossed a threshold together, and whatever came next, they would face it side by side. Zara stopped at the edge of a small clearing, and Jack followed her gaze. There, in the distance, he could see the faint outline of something unfamiliar, something that could change everything. Zara's expression was serious, her eyes focused on the horizon. Jack didn't need to ask, knew that they were about to face something new, something bigger than anything they had encountered before, and with the stone in his hand, he felt ready to face whatever that might be. The days had begun to blur together. Jack had grown used to the steady rhythm of survival. They gathered supplies. Every night, they sat together by the fire. Zara had become a constant presence in his life, and slowly, Jack had come to realize that she was more than just a companion. She was someone who had become essential to his world in ways he hadn't anticipated. Zara, too, had changed. She was no longer the distant, mysterious figure she had once been. Over time, Jack had seen her warmth. Her gestures had become more frequent, her silences less heavy. The alien woman who had once seemed cold and guarded now showed him glimpses of the person she really was, someone who had lived through hardships, someone who had suffered but still had a fierce desire to survive. One evening, as they sat by the fire, Jack noticed something in Zara's eyes, something he hadn't seen before. She was looking at the glowing stone in his hand, the one she had given him weeks ago. Her gaze was soft, almost contemplative. It was as if she was remembering something from her past. "Zara," Jack said quietly, breaking the silence, "I've been thinking about what you gave me. That stone. I don't really understand what it means, but it feels ... important." Zara looked up at him, her eyes focused. She didn't say anything, but her gaze softened. Jack could tell that the stone was more than just a gift. It was a symbol of something deeper, perhaps a bond between them. He could feel the weight of her unspoken words, and for the first time he felt like he understood her better. She wasn't just showing him gratitude. She was offering him a part of herself, something precious, something that meant trust. He held the stone closer to his chest, as if protecting it. I want you to know that I'll never forget what you've done for me. I'm not just here because of the crash, I'm here because of you. Zara's expression didn't change, but there was something in her eyes, a flicker of emotion. Something that spoke of shared understanding. She reached out, placing her hand on the stone in Jack's palm. She didn't speak, but her touch was gentle, reassuring. For a long time, they just sat there. Neither of them speaking, but the connection between them was stronger than ever. Jack had come to understand that survival wasn't just about finding food or shelter, it was about the people you shared it with. And with Zara, he had found someone who understood the weight of their circumstances, someone who knew the value of surviving together. The next morning, as the sun rose and painted the sky with hues of orange and pink, Zara led Jack through the forest again. She didn't say where they were going, but Jack trusted her. They had become a team, and he was beginning to see the planet through her eyes, her quiet strength, her determination, and her resilience. After walking for hours, they arrived at a place Jack had never seen before. It was a secluded valley, surrounded by towering cliffs on all sides. At the center of the valley stood what appeared to be an ancient structure, stone pillars that had long since crumbled, their once sharp edges now worn smooth by time. The structure looked abandoned, as if no one had been there for centuries. Zara motioned for Jack to follow her as she approached the stone pillars. She seemed drawn to the place, her steps slow and deliberate. As they reached the center, Zara stopped and looked around, her eyes scanning the ruins. Jack didn't speak at first, simply watching her. He could sense that this place held significance. For her, it wasn't just an old ruin, it was something personal. Slowly, he stepped closer to her, standing beside her. "This place," Zara finally said, her voice soft but clear. "It's where my people once lived. Before the war, before everything was destroyed." Now Jack's heart sank as he realized the weight of her words. The alien woman, who had seemed so strong and untouchable, had a past, a history filled with pain and loss. "I'm sorry," Jack said quietly, unsure of how to comfort her. "I didn't know." Zara didn't look at him right away. Instead, she placed her hand on one of the crumbled stone pillars, running her fingers over the weathered surface. "We were a peaceful people," she said. "We believed in harmony with the land, in understanding other species, but the war it took everything." Jack didn't know what to say. He could feel the sadness in her words, the heavy burden of loss that she carried. It was clear that her people were no more, wiped out by the very things she had fought to avoid. "But you survived," Jack said, his voice filled with quiet awe. "You're still here." Zara turned to face him, her eyes meeting his with an intensity that caught him off guard. "I survived because I had to," she said simply. "But survival isn't enough. I've learned that. It's not just about living, it's about living with purpose." Jack understood. In that moment, he realized that Zara had been surviving for far more than just herself. She had been fighting for the memory of her people, for their ideals and their way of life. She had been holding on to something that had been lost, hoping that one day she would find something worth living for again, and maybe, just maybe, that something was him. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the valley in a warm, golden light, Jack reached out and placed his hand gently on Zara's shoulder. It was a simple gesture, but it felt like the most important thing he had ever done. In that moment, he knew that no matter where the journey took them, they weren't just surviving anymore. They were building something together, a bond that went beyond the need to simply stay alive. Zara turned to him, her eyes softer now. She didn't speak, but Jack could feel her gratitude, her trust, and her quiet strength. They had both come so far, and yet it felt like the real journey was just beginning. The days had been passing slowly, and Jack had grown more accustomed to the alien world. He had learned to accept the quiet, the silence between him and Zara, and the way their lives had become intertwined. They were no longer just survivors. They were something more. Together, they had formed an unspoken bond, one that was as deep as it was mysterious. It wasn't just about surviving anymore, Jack realized that he had changed. He wasn't the same man who had crash-landed on this strange world. The loneliness he had felt when he first arrived had started to fade, replaced by a sense of connection to Zara. She had shown him what it meant to truly live, to be a part of something larger than himself. One evening, as they sat by the fire, Zara looked at him in a way she hadn't before. It was as if something had shifted within her. Her eyes were softer, and there was a quiet intensity to her gaze. Jack could feel it too. Something was changing, something that neither of them could ignore. "Zara," Jack said, his voice gentle. "What is it?" She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she reached into her pack and pulled out a small device tool that looked unlike anything Jack had seen before. It was sleek and metallic, with glowing lines running across its surface. Zara held it out to him, her eyes never leaving his. "This," she said, her voice low, "is a part of my culture. It is not just a tool. It's a symbol of who we are, of what we've lost." Jack took the device from her hands, feeling its weight in his palms. It was heavy, but it felt like something more than just a piece of technology. There was power in it, a quiet force that seemed to hum with energy. "What does it do?" Jack asked, curiosity rising within him. Zara didn't answer right away. Instead, she moved closer to him, her presence warm and calming. She placed her hand on his, her fingers brushing against his skin. Jack felt a shiver run down his spine. There was something deeply intimate about her touch, something that spoke of trust and understanding. "It allows us to share," she said softly, "to connect in a way that is beyond words. It is a bond between two beings, one that cannot be broken." Jack's heart began to race. He didn't fully understand, but he could feel the significance. Of the moment, Zara wasn't just offering him a tool. She was offering him something much deeper, a part of herself. A connection that went beyond anything he had ever experienced. Without another word, Zara activated the device. Lines on its surface flared brightly, and for a moment, Jack felt a rush of energy flow through him. It wasn't painful, but it was intense. His thoughts seemed to blur, and he felt as if he were seeing the world through Zara's eyes. He saw flashes of her past, the peaceful life she had once known, the people she had loved, and the devastation that had followed the war. Jack saw the pain and the loss she had carried with her, the burden of survival weighing on her shoulders. He felt the loneliness she had endured, and the strength she had summoned to keep going. The images faded as quickly as they had come, and Jack found himself gasping for breath. He looked at Zara, his heart pounding in his chest. "Zara, that was..." Jack's voice faltered as he tried to process the flood of emotions and memories that had just washed over him. "I felt everything. Your past, your pain. How is that even possible?" Zara's expression softened, and she reached out to touch his face gently. "It is possible because we are connected," she said quietly, "in a way that is beyond words, beyond understanding. You felt my pain, my memories, because you are a part of me now, and I am a part of you." Jack was silent, struggling to find the right words. I had never imagined anything like this, never thought it would be possible to connect with another being so deeply. But Zara had shown him that such connections existed, that they could bridge the gap between two worlds, two species. As the night wore on, Jack sat in quiet reflection, the weight of what had just happened settling over him. He didn't know what the future held, but he knew that he and Zara were no longer just surviving. They were sharing something profound, something that would change everything. In the days that followed, Jack and Zara grew even closer. The bond between them had deepened, and there was an unspoken understanding that they were no longer just two individuals. They were partners, bound together by their shared experiences, their shared pain, and their shared hope for the future. Jack had learned so much from Zara, not just about survival, but about what it meant to truly live. He had learned that strength wasn't just about physical endurance, but about emotional resilience. He had learned that survival meant nothing if you didn't have someone to share it with. As they sat together by the fire one evening, Jack looked at Zara with a new understanding in his eyes. The woman who had once been a stranger to him was now someone he couldn't imagine living without. "Thank you, Zara," Jack said, his voice filled with gratitude. "Thank you for showing me what it means to live." Zara smiled softly, her eyes glowing in the firelight. "Thank you, Jack," she replied, "for being here, for understanding." And in that moment, Jack realized that they had both changed, not just because of the planet, but because of each other. They had become something more than just survivors. They had become a family, bound together by something stronger than fate. The world around Jack had shifted in ways he couldn't quite explain. His days were no longer filled with just the struggle to survive. He had found something he hadn't expected on this alien planet: a connection, a purpose, and a sense of belonging. Zara had become more than just a companion. She had become a part of him. They had spent so many nights together by the fire, sharing their thoughts and fears in silence, understanding each other without the need for words. Their bond had grown deeper, and Jack could no longer imagine his life without her by his side. He had come to realize that they weren't just surviving anymore, they were building something together. One evening, as the two of them walked through the dense forest, Jack noticed a change in the air. The world around them felt different. Charged with an energy he couldn't describe, Zara was walking slightly ahead, her movements graceful and calm, but there was something about her that seemed more focused, as if she had a purpose in mind. "Zara," Jack called softly, his voice cutting through the stillness of the forest. Zara stopped and turned to face him, her eyes meeting his with an intensity that sent a chill down his spine. There was a seriousness in her gaze, a quiet determination, that made Jack's heart race. "It's time," she said simply, her voice carrying a weight that Jack couldn't ignore. Jack didn't ask what she meant. He had learned over the weeks that when Zara spoke like this, it was not the time for questions. Instead, he followed her as she led him to a small clearing that Jack hadn't seen before. The ground was covered in soft moss, and the air smelled fresh, like new beginnings. In the center of the clearing was a stone, structured, ancient, and weathered. But still standing tall, Zara stopped at the base of the stone structure and turned to Jack. "This place," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, "is where my people used to come together. It was a place of unity, where bonds were forged between our kind. It was a place of peace, of understanding." Jack looked around, feeling a sense of reverence in the air. He had always known that Zara's past was full of loss, but now he saw something deeper: connection to her people, to her history, too. Something she had lost. Zara knelt down on the moss-covered ground and looked up at Jack, her eyes glowing softly. "I want you to understand," she said, her voice filled with emotion. "When I gave you the stone, it was more than just a gift. It was a promise that we would share something beyond survival, that we would build something together." Jack dropped to his knees beside her, his heart heavy with the weight of her words. He had always known that their bond was more than just an accident. He had known that there was something deeper between them, something that neither of them could have predicted. "I understand," Jack said quietly, his voice thick with emotion. "I felt it, Zara. I've felt it every day since I found you. We're not just surviving, we're living together." Zara smiled, her eyes softening. She reached out and took Jack's hand in hers, the warmth of her touch grounding him. "I never thought I would find someone like you," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "I never thought I would find someone who could understand me, who could share in my pain, my memories. But you've shown me that there's more to life than just surviving. You've shown me that there's still hope." Her hand, his heart swelling with gratitude. "Zara, you've done the same for me. You've made me see that there's more to this world than just what I can see with my eyes. You've made me believe in something greater than myself." In that moment, Jack knew that what they shared was something rare. It wasn't just a bond formed out of necessity. It was a bond built on mutual respect, understanding, and love. He had come to this strange world alone, unsure of what his future held. But now he knew that Zara was his future. And together, they could face whatever challenges came their way. Zara stood and pulled Jack to his feet, her gaze never leaving his. She stepped closer, her breath warm against his skin, and Jack's heart pounded in his chest. He knew what she was offering. He could feel it in the air, in the way her body seemed to call to him, without a word. Zara placed her forehead against his, her hands resting gently on his shoulders. Jack closed his eyes, feeling the connection between them deepen that moment. It wasn't just their bodies that were close, it was their souls. They had shared their memories, their pain, and now they were sharing something even more profound. A promise, a bond, a future. When Zara finally pulled back, our eyes were filled with a quiet light. We are no longer just two beings from different worlds, she said softly. We are one, and nothing, not time, not distance, can change that. Jack smiled, feeling a sense of peace settle in his chest. Together, he whispered. Together. Zara nodded, her gaze never wavering. They had faced so much, and yet they had found something even more powerful than survival. They had found each other. And in that moment, Jack knew that no matter what came next, they would face it together, side by side. Their journey had just begun.